Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Good afternoon and welcome to the next edition of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I'm your host. Today I am delighted to welcome to the show Mike Hayward from Woodfines Solicitors. Mike, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Chris. It's a real pleasure to be here today. It's a particularly exciting day with the British MotoGP going on.
Definitely.
I'm coming in my car, but looking at all the motorbikes outside, I wish perhaps I should get one of those one day.
Huge envy.
But it's very nice to be here. Thank you.
No, pleasure, and thank you for coming on. Mike, before we get into the main bulk of the interview, what I'd like to do is just run through your CV, if that's okay, just for the benefit of our listeners, just so they understand sort of why we've asked you to come on. Information I've sort of gathered off Google and LinkedIn, etc. So if anything here needs changing or updating, just let me know. Career began in 1990, where you work for the Crown Prosecution Service.
That's correct.
Which then naturally evolved into training as a police station arrest advisor, and then having some experience as a paralegal. 1995, you crossed the line, as it were, and moved into practice, where by 2002 you joined Woodfines Solicitors as a trainee, and in 2008 qualified as a solicitor. And then in 2012 became a partner of Woodfines.
That's correct. I mean, first of all, Chris, be careful what you read online, but no, you seem to be absolutely accurate with your investigation.
Good.
I started in the Crown Prosecution Service. Going through those dates makes me feel particularly old, but it's been an absolute pleasure over the last 25 years or so to be in the justice system. But it's those skills and it's the ability where I've been both prosecuting and defending that I pride myself on being able to give a lot of independent advice and to steer people through any problem situations that they face.
Great. So I think we'll come on to what you specifically specialise in a moment. What I'd love to do is just focus initially on Woodfines Solicitors as a firm. Where first and foremost you are a member of the Silverstone Technology Cluster, alongside my business Longhurst. And so, what do Woodfines do? What do you guys sort of specialise in as a firm of solicitors? And sort of how long have you been running? And what's the sort of story behind the business?
Certainly, well, in fact, the roots of Woodfines are about 100 years old now.
Wow. Okay.
Despite being in the business since 1990, and you're talking about the dates, I haven't been there quite that long, but we based in offices in Cambridge, Bedford, Milton Keynes. Okay. We cover on a national basis. We're a multidisciplinary practice, so we deal with all aspects of both private client, commercial advice, and we also specialise in transportation, which is one of our niche areas, which it has been some for many decades now, and also agriculture. So it's a real pleasure because we get to visit businesses, visit farms, visit locations to really get an understanding of people's businesses and their personal lives so that we can give them the best structure. So whilst I head up our regulatory services, health and safety, environment agency issues, and all the way through to personal difficulties people face in motoring courts, my company deal with all complementary services when it comes to commercial, corporate matters, conveyancing, family law, and all areas of litigation. So a full service law firm.
Excellent. Okay. And so you've got offices in Milton Keynes, so just down
That's
the road
correct.
from Silverstone, just where we are at the moment in the Innovation Centre, which is where this is being recorded. You've got offices in Bedfordshire and as well as Cambridgeshire. And so the Cambridgeshire, this is, I didn't actually ask you this before we started, actually. Did you have a relationship with the cluster over there? Do you guys work over there? Or,
we have connections again where we work very closely with the East of England areas. So we provide lots of business connections in the area of Duxford, where you've got the Imperial War Museum. We're also closely connected with Cranfield University, which we have been for many years, and we're very proud to be connected with that.
Sure.
Over the last year, we've had connections now with the Silverstone Tech Cluster, which we're very proud to be attached to. We've been to a lot of the seminars and the talks, which we've found incredibly rewarding, and we've also mentioned that to a lot of businesses that we work with in the Northamptonshire area. Logistics companies, everything through to HR companies, because there's clearly something extremely positive going on here. To come along, see the innovation around the Brackley, Silverstone areas, the amount of businesses that we have on site here is just fantastic. So we're very pleased to be part of that, very, very happy to be able to get involved in any specific forums and also to provide some sort of niche updates on aspects. But it's more about meeting entrepreneurs, innovative businesses, whether they're fledgling companies or whether they're established. It's just fantastic gaining that knowledge from other business leaders and making really good connections.
Yeah,
so very pleased to do that.
Yeah, in total agreement with that. And so your role within Woodfines, so you're head of crime, regulatory and transport.
That's correct, yes. So sadly, businesses, however compliant they are, sometimes things go a little wrong. So sometimes we're called the parachute team, sometimes I'm called the Grim Reaper.
Right.
So I or my team will drop in should there be a error made, and that can range from perhaps a tragic lorry accident,
Right.
which may at the first instance have the police involvement, but often that will then involve the health and safety executive visiting an operator centre.
Yep.
It may then lead to the DVSA who deal with compliance of road laws.
Yeah.
It may involve HMRC. So we have a team that will drop in order to preserve the position, try and provide some protection and to create some early intervention so that we can go in, we can liaise with those in authority and to try and steady the ship. And again, not seeing it as a massive negative, but by saying to companies, there's been a mistake. Let's get that resolved. Let's move on from there. Let's improve matters and try and put your business back on the road as quickly as we possibly can. We work very collaboratively, not just with our own legal units. So we may have aspects where HMRC come in. So even if I'm dealing with an issue to do with driver's hours breaches, we would then want to look at employment contracts, make sure that employment situation is tight. We may then refer to financial planners, advisors, accountants to make sure that the company as a whole has a health check to make sure that, yes, they can put this bad episode behind them, move on, and to get back into industry and to get back being productive as soon as possible. Business downtime is a massive problem for any industry, whatever the product or whatever you are developing. So if you have any enforcement, we try and go in, deal with it as calmly as we can, keep everything rather steady so that business can get through it as painlessly as possible.
And so just focusing on the enforcement piece and certainly picking up on the driving aspects. So certainly within the Silverstone business region and definitely within the Silverstone technology cluster, there are going to be businesses that have lorries on the road delivering products or and otherwise. What examples could you provide of sort of driver breaches? You've mentioned accidents, but what other things could businesses not be paying attention to that they should be, that could actually end up leading to an enforcement team coming in and then potentially you having to be employed to sort of help remedy and fix the solution?
Sure, well, entirely. Well, without going into detail of some of the real tragic things that occur, very serious road collisions that trigger enforcement, it can just be something as simple as a roadside stop. In fact, coming in here today with the British MotoGP going on, there's obviously a lot of police enforcement around ANPR vans. So it can be as simple as your grey fleet, your company car fleet, where the vehicle tax has been missed or the MOT has been missed, or mistakenly the administration of those cars has meant that the vehicle is uninsured. Well, just minor things like that. Check what your motor policy is. Have a driver policy. If you have company cars, make sure that there's a log in there to know exactly who is driving at any given time. Because if the police do say, here's a notice of intended prosecution, this vehicle was used in a speeding offence, who is it? It's actually a company offence if you do not know who was driving your car at any given time. That's just a minor thing, but it's one we see throughout the country on a daily basis. Companies being fined as well as the driver because the companies don't have a proper driver policy in place. Something as simple as that. But what we are frequently dealing with are fleet operators, vehicles that are governed by operator licensing, and minibus driving coaches and so on, where drivers' hours rules must be adhered to, taking sufficient rest breaks, making sure that you're having proper weekend breaks. Now, in a time of major competition, at a time where there's driver shortage on a national basis, something that I'm particularly passionate about, of getting young people understanding how important logistics is. It's the lifeblood of our country.
Yeah.
It's the lifeblood of everything that we do. That ultimately it's a very, very strong business, but driver shortage remains an issue. So a lot of companies we are seeing are cutting some corners by allowing their good drivers perhaps to drive a little bit longer than they should, because they want to keep the customers happy. But that's a breach. And if that's the sort of breach that's going on, then enforcement agencies such as the DVSA will come in and they'll inspect driver records. And those matters can get you as a company into a lot of trouble, as well as losing your operator licence.
And what's leading to driver shortages? Is the dreaded, did I say, Brexit having an impact on that, or what's the reason for shortages?
Well, Brexit is a big issue, and it's one that I'm keeping very close tabs on, something that I speak to the industry about on a regular basis. We want to see what's going to happen in March of next year. We're very concerned about delays on the M20 at Dover or any ports of entry. More importantly, I worry about the drivers that I act for and the companies that I act for suddenly finding themselves on the continent and not being able to get back across. I don't think there's going to be as many, forgive the puns, bumps in the road as perhaps we're getting concerned about. But we've got to do better. We've got to make sure that our driver CPC qualifications in this country are going to be recognised across Europe. We've got to make sure of that. We want to ensure that there are those correct, without borders on those channels, to make sure that people are continuing the business as we are now. And I have little doubt that all countries are going to want to reciprocate. But the silence that I'm seeing at the minute from government on this and those departments has to be louder. We've got to ensure that there is some more stability here. So we're watching that very closely. But driver shortage, from a migration point of view, we rely very heavily on people from other countries providing and shoring up those driver shortage. We have a fantastic workforce out there, but there's still tens of thousands of shortage of drivers. One other thing that I lobby on a regular basis is we don't have good enough rest stops for professional drivers. Service stations charge for people to stop there, which is just another barrier to that. We don't have very safe lay-by stops. So you've got young people saying to themselves, well, is this a job that I particularly want? Now, I'm particularly passionate about it. I enjoy getting in a lorry. I enjoy seeing what it's about. And it's such an important part of everything that we do in society. But getting people to say, no, is this a safe job for me? Well, that's what we've got to do better on. Highways agency infrastructure needs to be improved. Toll costs need to be improved. Our road network needs to be improved to make sure that there's safe places for those rest breaks to take place. So this is something that's very important. It's a good industry, and it's one that I know that the technical college here are really passionate behind. Logistics, the process, SEMLEP in this region. Again, with Silverstone Tech, encouraging young people and others to get into that logistics world, transportation, and recognising actually of how key it is to everything that we do.
And obviously with your role going into businesses to sort of support them, presumably you're in and out of court frequently, probably presumably weekly or monthly.
Yeah, sometimes daily. So
right.
My team across the country, and obviously with bases very, very local to us. Northampton's a regular court for us. There's been a lot of court closures, which I find quite sad in essence. It makes it difficult for people to get to places, whether you're a witness or whether you are accused. The reality is criminal cases can be brought against any range of people in society. People make errors and mistakes, ranging from motoring through to very large frauds. So we're regularly in court. navigating through the process in order to explain to people, which is ultimately a frightening experience, what's going to happen and what is the best that we can achieve from that. So criminal courts, civil courts, and also into public inquiries where we're dealing with traffic commissioners and dealing with the issues of operator licensing, driver conduct. We are about being on the road, going into court to keep people's businesses going, so that even if there is a bump in the road, there is a mistake made, we try and get things settled down as quickly as we possibly can.
Presumably, Woodfines as a business, as a law firm, do you provide a service where you can go into businesses to provide support identifying areas of weakness, go through a checklist, as it were, help them put in place the right foundations so that they can reduce and mitigate some of these potential sort of future errors that might occur? What do you guys do there as a service? How can you help some of the businesses on the STC with that?
We certainly do. So we carry out health checks, and it may be from a litigation point of view.
Yeah.
How can you reduce your liability? Have you got your contracts right with the people that you're doing business with? Simple matters such as that can mean that you're able to deal with your debt collection a little bit easier, that actually those contracts need strengthening. There's been changes in the law, whether it be about your employees' rights or otherwise, keeping up to date. So the companies that we work for, our teams, our employment teams, our commercial teams, our regulatory teams, are regularly just updating them. Have you identified this? Have you seen what's been going on? Uber being a typical one where the issues of agencies, employees, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, these principles being established by the courts run through every sector. So we're keeping an eye on those on a regular basis, whether it be for our social media channels or directly contacting the clients that we know, just to say, look, just to update you, have you seen this? Are you making sure that this is your situations are following it? So we do carry out health checks. From a regulatory point of view, I will go in to make sure that they're policies are up to date, that they're carrying out maintenance on their vehicles in accordance with the latest guidance and the law in relation to good roadworthiness. I'll be making sure that their drivers' hours are being complied with. That's our proactive service. It's part of ensuring that things aren't going to go wrong, or you're doing what you can to avoid it going wrong. Sadly, issues will still arise. But if, for example, your driver does something completely maverick, is involved in a serious offence whilst driving one of your company vehicles, and don't forget, your company name will be emblazoned on it and often in social media within minutes of an incident. If enforcement were to come into your company, you want to have shown that you've taken all reasonably practical steps to ensure that your drivers are complying. For example, mobile phone use. If a vehicle is stopped, a vocational driver is stopped using their mobile phone, the police or the DVSA may say to a company, well, do you actually have a policy not to phone your drivers when your vehicles are on a delivery? A lot of companies now will have tracking devices. Make sure that your operation team aren't phoning a driver when they are moving. A lot of companies will have those tracking systems. Have a policy in place. Make sure that the vehicle is stopped before you pass a job onto your next driver. It's simple processes. Now, this isn't just, well, it may appear to be very boring health and safety type legal speak, but actually the way I see it is this. If you have strong compliance systems in place, that often reflects in your good business practices. It makes you more saleable as such to your business clients of saying, these are the processes we have. It makes it stronger often for procurement processes to say, these are the systems that we have. So getting those foundations in place, your staff trained with the systems of operation, often means a much smoother transition into the commercial world. So this is time that's often well invested to ensure that you become a strong reputation and your business is strong and going forward.
Yeah, sounds good. You're clearly very knowledgeable and passionate about this as a subject matter, which is impressive and very, very important. So thank you. That's a lot of information, and I'm sure very, very helpful to all of our listeners. In relation to the Silverstone Technology Cluster, so Woodfines are a member, as I said, alongside Longhurst and many others. I think it's up to sort of 80 odd at the moment, which is fantastic.
It is.
What's been your personal experience and also feedback from your colleagues regarding the STC and your time since presumably 2017 when you joined? What's it been like?
It's been absolutely fantastic, and the wonderful thing is that we've been looking at some of the events that have been held here, had various colleagues attend. I've been to a lot of talks, and even just hearing, as a local man as I am, because I live just down the road, to hear about the businesses down in Brackley and also those obviously on site at Silverstone that are part of the cluster, it's just fantastic. It widens our knowledge. It means that we can work out, actually, if we're dealing with a client, they might benefit from that business, whether they are professional service operator or industry. It's that wonderful thing to come and meet different people. The numbers that are attending here are fantastic, so you really get to shake some hands with some really decent people to learn from them. We have to open our minds, not be too insular in any industry, whatever we're doing. Work together as a team. These sort of collaborations, I think, are absolutely superb. Yeah. Whether it be very experienced partners of mine through to trainee solicitors that have come along to some of the events, everybody's got something from them. Yeah. And we've really thoroughly enjoyed those. Just reading some of the matters coming up on the website that there is on there, and just keeping up to speed with what's going on locally. It's just a fantastic forum, great outlet, and very much enjoying it.
Yeah, again, totally agree. I think, since Longhurst and I have been on site, and also since I've been doing these podcasts, I can certainly say that I'm learning a lot more about subject matters that I wouldn't typically have read about previously. Including this very interview, talking about logistics and transport issues. It's fantastic and can only benefit all of our sort of respective clients and business associates, but also everybody on site. So yeah, 100% agree with that. If you could sort of fine-tune your thoughts on STC into one sentence, how would you encourage businesses that either aren't working on site yet or are but aren't part of the cluster? How would you encourage them? What would you say to them to say, look, you should really consider becoming a member?
Entirely. We are all so, of course, wrapped up in our own businesses on a daily basis. Yeah. It provides to just get that sort of holistic approach of understanding what's going on in your region, what's going on with where you live, where you are in business, meeting people that are like-minded, whether you're in the same industry or not. It's actually a delight meeting those from other law firms. What areas do they specialise in? There's nothing wrong at all with saying to one solicitor to another, well, you're a specialist in motoring law, so can you go and deal with my client for that? You've got to have that trust and that open relationship about it. Sure. To be part of a cluster where there's a whole range of industry and seeing those, whether it be small SMEs, where you're moving into larger businesses, just getting part of that excitement and realising actually, aren't we fortunate to be working and living in an area where there's events going on of this nature? You're meeting different people outside of your direct industry, perhaps, but it just widens that knowledge. It's a fantastic thing. We need to be open-minded that you can learn something from everybody and get to know what people are doing, how their businesses are structured, and actually be open with one another about, we can complement each other here and we can work as a team. And I think there's something that's really positive about the cluster here. Yeah, totally agree. And presumably, because of being based in Milton Keynes, you must know obviously the other professional advice firms on site, the other solicitors, accountants, and banks and what have you. So, of course. Totally resonate the concept of sort of joining forces and as one united front and providing added value to all the members. So. Entirely. Great feedback. Well, I think we've got to a place, haven't we, where social media, everybody's been moving towards watching Twitter, looking at LinkedIn. It has a place, there's no question about that. But real life relationships, meeting people, getting to understand their businesses, coming along to the events that are here, there's a real place for that. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So one of the key aspects of all of these interviews that I want to focus on, if that's okay, is a little bit more about you. Oh dear. As in Mike. And the reason for that is that, and it's to sort of actually resonate what you've just been talking about. Really, it's about
opening up and providing people and listeners and the business owners and everyone else involved with sort of STC and the region and wider with a genuine sense of authenticity and a little bit about obviously your background and what's led you to sort of get into law and also live and work within the region. So let's take it sort of back. So you live locally?
I do, yeah. So I live just outside Brackley, which is just a few miles down the road.
Sure.
Have done now for 23 years.
Okay, wow.
Have been in the same house since then. Have to say that we've got such a diverse community here. We've got the American Air Force Base close by. You've got Silverstone Circuit. There's always things going on, and I think it's just fantastic. We're in such a wonderful location. I work all over the country. So again, fantastic position to be in, to be on motorway networks very quickly.
Yeah.
In a way, it's going to sound rather corny, but it's true. I'm very lucky to have almost a job that is very much a hobby, going to look at vehicles and checking compliance and looking at those activities, getting to know people, going into courts on a daily basis. It's something that I enjoy, notwithstanding the pressures that come with that. But young family, growing up locally. I studied and worked at the same time, as you've alluded to, from from 1990 with the Crown Prosecution Service. I had a family of enforcement officers, police officers and the like.
Okay.
And law appeared to be the way forward. Again, at the risk of sounding far too corny, always been the fighter for the underdog. And the underdog isn't just necessarily the individual, but anybody that is facing perhaps a slight injustice. So it's very, very important for me to be able to gain as much information, represent their interests, and to help people through that. That's something that I've enjoyed doing. It's something that I get my team to feel, and I'm very, very lucky to have a fantastic team who share exactly that ethos. Everybody deserves a say and everybody deserves that element of fairness. So living locally is fantastic. I'm just down the road from here. I come up to Silverstone, I come up to the circuit frequently. I have been to the Grand Prix and I enjoy it. But it's actually the local events, the classic Grand Prix, those sort of events are just fantastic.
Did you go? Because I went to the Brackley Festival of Motorbikes or Motorcycles a couple of weeks ago. Did you go to that?
That's a fantastic day.
Yeah.
And again, probably one of the most important motorsport events in the calendar in Northamptonshire is clearly the Soapbox Derby down at Brackley High Street.
Of course.
But it's those days are fantastic. And how lucky are we to have the motor industry, the motorsport industry so nearby.
Of course.
But it's everything from passing the Mercedes factory on a regular basis to actually coming to Silverstone College, the Tech College. A lot of our friends' children are studying here. What a fantastic route that they have to come onto this site, be able to look out the window and to be literally part and parcel of the fantastic circuit it is. It's inspirational for children, and I think that is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
So from the region point of view, extremely happy here and enjoy it very much. I'm very lucky to have a major client base in the Northamptonshire area. The football at Northampton's important to me. I'm an Oxford United supporter.
Reading are my second team.
Well, Reading are your second team. I know Liverpool your first one, but I'm not sure you're going to be bothered too much by Oxford or MK Dons in the near future.
Sure.
MK Dons, again, very close to my heart because they're local teams. It's the same with the rugby clubs here, the Saints, Bedford Blues, you name it. But these are things that we must support locally. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and they provide a heart to our towns. So these things are all important.
What's your earliest memory? You've clearly got a passion for trucks, if we just define it as that, and which is then naturally led on to logistics and then clearly law, or the other way around. What led to your passion and your interest in vehicles and lorries and trucks specifically?
Well, apart from the fact just enjoying cars, whether they be from our old day Ford Fiesta RS turbos or whatever we used to drive in the 80s and 90s, very lucky indeed because Woodfines have been involved in transport now for over 30 years.
Right.
So having gone into Woodfines and training there, I was very lucky to be mentored by by lawyers that had exactly that passion.
Right.
So, and sitting at desks with lawyers that had old tachograph machines on them rather than, quill pens. So we have, I've just sort of grown with it, really. But there's nothing like just keeping up to speed with matters. It's the same with the work that we're doing at looking at autonomous vehicles.
Yep.
Not just cars, of course, but with Cranfield University and the connections with Silverstone, how much innovation that is going on in relation to autonomous vehicles. Milton Keynes very much a centre of that as well, with large companies that I know that are connected with the STC as well. We're looking at that closely. Lorries, platooning, multiple lorries without drivers. These are things that are utterly fascinating, not just from a liability point of view, but also from the engineering side of that and how that's going to work. So as a lawyer, watching how that's developing over the next few years, I suppose I'll still be working when platooning goes on. Autonomous vehicles are going to be commonplace. I hope I'll still be working in those years. Yeah. But it's not that far around the corner, so it's fascinating stuff.
No, it's not. It's you're right. We've had a couple of interviews prior to this. Talking about obviously electric vehicles and the speed of development, and the fact that the technology is outstripping the ability for businesses to actually be able to produce and develop. So. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be around and still practicing when that happens. But yeah, you're right. It's it's absolutely fascinating. From a career perspective, one of the questions that I've been asking, certainly to add an authenticity factor, is to ask everybody about potentially a business or strategic mistake that they've made, if ever, in their career, one that they would define as potentially an important moment, a pivotal moment, or something that they just look back on and think, God, I was a prat then, I shouldn't have done that. Have you? I appreciate you're a solicitor and you work for a respectful firm in the city, but has there been anything that Mike has ever done in his career where you thought, God, that was a key lesson learned?
Because I feel like I'm being cross-examined in court now. This
Indeed.
Is totally uncomfortable. I could reel off dozens of embarrassing moments for obvious reasons, especially in the courtroom. From a business point of view, I think the one thing that I have learned is it doesn't matter about hierarchy. It doesn't matter what level you are. You work as a team, and that's everybody that's part of your office and your team and your company, whether you are a senior partner, office junior, trainee solicitor, receptionist. Everybody is key to good community work, good customer service. And I suppose as a younger lawyer, especially when you're training and you're about to qualify, being self-effacing about it, there's that element of ego that lawyers have. I can say that now as an older man, but as a younger man, you think, gosh, I'm going to be a solicitor, and maybe I can then start talking differently to people that are working for me. Well, no, not at all. We are massively about a team working together as a whole unit. Very, very important, regardless of having management and business structure. Of course you must. But the key thing is it's important to work together with people, not just in your industry, the companies that you're working with and the professional people that you're working alongside, whether it be accountants, other lawyers, bankers, and so on. Just know that it's about human beings, and what goes around comes around. I think it's very important.
Such a powerful statement, that, because you are right. I think, and picking up on the ego word, I think you are right. A lot of firms, it's not just focused on solicitor firms at all, but actually just a lot of businesses occasionally do suffer from an ego position from a sort of management and board. I read Ego is the Enemy on holiday a couple of months ago, and I wish I'd read that book when I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s. And I definitely think it's a book that more professionals should read, because you're right, ego can sort of kill a culture. And you're right, looking at a business as a family, looking at it where everybody's important, everyone's a cog on a very important wheel, and that actually without that respect and mutual support, actually the machine will break down at some point, or people will leave and go and work for your competitors or whatever whatever it is. So
absolutely, and that's something that certainly Woodfines have got such a strong ethos of training, mentoring and support. Sure. And that's from partner level of peer mentoring at all levels, and I think that's hugely important, something that we're very proud of. The reality is, if you're happy in your job and you're happy with the people you're working for, that's going to get across to your business clients, your people that you're working for. Ultimately, we want to be able to do a strong, decent job, and of course we do, but we want to do that in a happy environment, and that certainly rubs off.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool. So we're sort of coming up to the end of the interview. So before I get on to the final question, is there anything that I've missed, anything that I haven't asked you, or anything you wanted to cover off in a couple of minutes that you thought would be important?
Well, sure. I mean, you can probably tell that I could probably sit here all day talking about legal issues and courts and issues that we see on the road. I think it's just a message, really, that is, just sit back, whatever business you're in, look at your systems, just think, actually, we last dealt with these 5 years ago, these processes. Shall we just take a quick review of them? And this isn't a sales pitch. This is something that businesses can do themselves. Just checking, are they running their vehicles safely? Have they got the best maintenance contracts with those that are looking after their vehicles? These days, it may seem like the simplest of things, but since the tax disc has gone out of our windscreens, the amount of people that are now forgetting to tax their cars, regardless of the vehicle excise licence reminders, has gone through the roof. But often people saw that as a reminder also when their MOT was due and their insurance was due. So just some simple things, simple tools. The DVLA have a ability where you can just sign up to that, and that will send further reminders. Just simple matters.
Okay.
Stop the police, stop the DVSA, stop the Health and Safety Executive, any other agency coming to knock on your door simply because of a simple matter. Look at the simple basics, and most of the more complex things will then fall into place. And
presumably within the show notes that will be published not only on a website but also on iTunes for where the podcast is hosted, presumably you could give me one or two links for things like the DVLA, like just as you just mentioned, so that people can go and do this themselves.
Happily do so.
Awesome.
Very much so.
Great. Okay. So, very last question is purely a selfish one, actually, because
Sure.
I'm the host and I can ask questions to benefit myself.
Of course.
But I say that with a smile. But what piece of advice could you give me, whether it be professionally or personally, something about life or something profound that Mike has learnt over your life? What piece of advice could you give me?
I think something that you've actually shown that you've been doing over the last so many weeks is actually getting to know the individuals in business, and actually, as a personable individual and quite gregarious, you're going to have that natural ability, probably just to get those skills across to the people that you work with, and if you employ people, just making sure that you share that skill across, making sure that you're bringing them through as well, delegating, make sure that it's not just you as such. I know that your business is very much you focused, but it's about making sure that you're training people, bringing people through, and I think that's a really important thing. Not being selfish about your particular expertise, and making sure that you're sharing that skill and knowledge base.
Yeah, entirely agree. And I think, we're within Longhurst, but also, other professionals within my peer group, I'm very much about sharing knowledge, whether it be providing people books to read that have been influential in my life as a financial planner and a business owner, but also to try and instill a level of confidence, you've said, and positiveness regarding, either meeting people or learning how to listen and ask the right questions, and then shut up. Key lesson that I don't think a lot of people are particularly good at, certainly not in my profession anyway.
It's very easy indeed, isn't it, that we automatically go on the defensive if anybody wants to say, actually, how would you like to do things differently? And we get on that defensive. It's actually about opening your mind and saying, what can I learn from this? And how can we make it a little bit better? Now, that does sound, again, rather corny, but the reality is, as you get older and you get involved in business and you have a lot more life experiences, it's getting that across. Just open your mind, learn, get to the numerous forums, such as the cluster here does, and it's just so valuable. And that's we want to enjoy our days, and we want to enjoy our businesses, and these sort of collaborative forums are superb for that.
Great. So that's the end of the interview. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time today. What we'll do in the show notes is provide all the listeners access to you. So I'll put a link to your sort of bio on the Woodfines website, where I must say, actually, you are a lot happier and smilier than your picture on Woodfines. Yeah, that's true. You look quite intimidating, but I say that was a joke. But it's but so we'll enable people to be able to connect with you for commercial reasons. We'll also, with your support, put on any links that you think would be beneficial to any of the business owners, so they can do some checking themselves, some self-checking. And then I would love, as I've said to everyone else, I think your passion for logistics and vehicles and trucks and supporting the local businesses on site, I think is so infectious that I definitely want to get you back on. One thing that I definitely want you to think about, because you were very neat at swerving the mistake question, where actually you didn't admit to a mistake, but you provided a very diplomatic answer regarding the lessons learned within businesses and hierarchy. But have a think about that anyway, and when we get you back on, we can I'll ask that question.
You get a colleague on and they'll tell you all my mistakes.
Fine.
Well, I'll finish with that. I went into court a couple of years ago, having gone out at lunchtime to buy some sweets for a kid's party, for one of my children's parties.
Okay.
As I bent down to grab an exhibit in the second part of the trial, I accidentally pulled this whole bag out. So I literally threw about 25 Twixes all over the place in front of the court.
Brilliant.
That was a pretty embarrassing day.
That's a great story.
I still won the case, fortunately, but there we go.
Well, naturally, would have expected nothing less. But
plenty of other embarrassing moments like that. But anyway, brilliant. Pleasure to meet you, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on, and let's do it again soon.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.